Hello and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, France pushes Israel to participate in its international peace conference. Record numbers of Israeli Arabs are joining the IDF, and Israel harnesses the power of marijuana to treat the pain of millions worldwide. I'm Natasha Kirchek here with the latest news in Israel. France is back at it again on a mission to convince Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu to meet with his Palestinian counterpart in Paris this month. The attempt to revive peace talks between the two sides has been at the top of the French agenda, but Israel has already formally rejected Paris's invitation to take part in a Middle East peace conference. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas and foreign ministers from almost 24 countries are planning to meet in Paris on December 21st, all as part of an international push to jumpstart peace negotiations.
Il faut créer à nouveau les conditions des deux États. Il ne faut pas oublier cette perspective. Car oublier cette perspective serait une grave faute politique vis-à-vis du peuple palestinien, mais aussi une grave faute politique par rapport à la sécurité dans cette région du Proche-Orient.
The world leaders may be gathering in the name of peace, but the Israeli prime minister has been clear that Israel wants no part of it. Netanyahu believes that peace will only be achieved through direct negotiations with the Palestinians, and not through international conferences. In fact, the Israeli leader believes that attending the French peace conference will push peace even farther away. But France remains committed to staging the conference, and Parisian officials are doing everything possible to convince the Israeli and Palestinian leaders to meet with the French president.
Donc nous sommes toujours, la France, déterminée à mettre en œuvre notre initiative d'une conférence. Nous sommes actuellement dans un travail intense de relations avec nos partenaires pour créer les conditions de son organisation. Donc, je ne vous donnerai pas de date, mais le plus tôt sera le mieux.
The idea would be to bring the two leaders together just a day after the conference, as a means of circumventing Israeli accusations that the French want to impose a multilateral peace solution. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is saying he will happily meet with the Palestinian president under other circumstances, but the Palestinians seem to be in support of the French Peace Forum. Palestinian officials claim Abbas has not yet received an invitation to Paris for the conference or for direct talks with Netanyahu. Supporters of Israel's settlement bill are cheering today after the controversial proposal seeking to legitimize illegal West Bank outposts passed another hurdle in the Knesset. The lawmakers are taking what's widely being seen as a first step towards asserting full Israeli sovereignty over the West Bank. But the 58-51 vote demonstrates a near-even split over the measure. Opponents believe the legislation amounts to the theft of private property, and left-wing peace groups argue the bill would legalize about 55 outposts and 4,000 housing units, stretching over an area of 3 square miles. Supporters say the disputed settlements were inadvertently built on private Palestinian land, and the original owners will be compensated. The Jewish Home Party, which sponsored the proposal, believes the land of Israel belongs to the people of Israel, who returned after 2,000 years to recreate their state. They insist a nation can't be an occupier in its own land and is free to enact whatever legislation it chooses in accordance with democracy. The legislation has already been condemned by the United States, the European Union, and the United Nations. Israel's own Attorney General points out the proposal may actually violate both local and international law, and the High Court could strike it down before it's ever even implemented. Other officials, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, have expressed concerns it could even possibly lead to Israel's eventual prosecution by the International Criminal Court in The Hague. The Knesset still needs to pass a proposed legislation 2 more times before it can officially become law. Israel has absolutely no interest in becoming involved in the Syrian civil war, but it will take any action necessary to defend itself. Those words are coming from Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman today in an apparent confirmation that the Jewish state is behind both recent strikes in the neighboring Arab Republic. Lieberman says Israeli policy operates on 3 red lines to keep any harm from coming to the nation's citizens: damage caused to national sovereignty or advanced weapons from being smuggled into Lebanon for Hezbollah terrorists. These latest statements echo earlier declarations from Lieberman indicating the terror group is attempting to obtain weapons of mass destruction. Today, the defense chief is also dismissing notions that Russia's deployment of the long-range advanced S-400 missile defense system in western Syria is deterring Israel from carrying out airstrikes and possibly curtailing the IDF's air superiority in the region. Lieberman is stressing that the Jewish state makes its decisions absolutely freely without consideration of any other circumstances or limitations, other than red lines he's listing. The incidents that Israel's believed to be responsible for include an overnight attack near a Damascus military airport yesterday, in addition to last week's airstrikes against a weapons depot near the Syrian capital and a Hezbollah convoy. Jerusalem rarely offers official confirmation of any military activity within Syria, but has been very public about its mission to keep the Shiite Islamist Hezbollah terror group from further amassing its deadly arsenal for use against Israeli citizens. Israel should use its influence to persuade U.S. President-elect Donald Trump to adopt moderate policies regarding nuclear weaponry. At least that's the view of top nuclear expert Jayantha Dhanapala from Sri Lanka. ILTV's Steve Leibowitz spoke to Dhanapala in London on the sidelines of the Luxembourg Forum in Preventing Nuclear Catastrophe to learn more.
We all know that Israel is a de facto nuclear weapon possessing state, and with nuclear weapon possession goes a certain responsibility, and I'm sure that Israel is very conscious of that. We are having a new president in the most powerful country in the world, the sole surviving superpower, who together with the Russian Federation possess 93% of the total nuclear weapons in the world. And therefore I think there is a moral responsibility on the part of Israel, with whom I think Mr. Donald Trump does have a very good relationship, to try to influence Mr. Trump in policies of moderation and stability. It is in everybody's interest to do that. And I think encouraging him into adventurism would be very, very dangerous. And it is contrary to the national interests of Israel. It is not for me to lecture the Israeli leaders on what their national interests should be, but as a dispassionate observer of the international scene for a very long time, who has a lot of sympathy with the state of Israel and the right of Israel to exist, but not with its nuclear weapon possession, whatever the reasons for that may be. So I believe that these are very testing times for all of us. And I believe the role we can all play in achieving a common security, a cooperative security, I think is very, very compelling. And my knowledge of the Israeli nation, they are a richly endowed country with intellectual resources, with foresight and with great wisdom going back to the ancient past. I think there is a role that they can play in this new administration of the United States.
It's no secret that our Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, strongly lobbied against the Iran nuclear deal. It's also no secret that Donald Trump campaigned saying that the nuclear deal was the worst deal ever made in history and it had to be thrown out. Do you expect that Israel can play a role in kind of not pushing for Trump to fulfill that campaign promise?
I hope indeed that they do, because there is an expression in the United States that you campaign in poetry and you rule and govern in prose. So the rhetoric of election campaigns is very different from the sober reality that dawns on politicians when they assume power. And my hope is that, as indeed is happening all the time, President-elect Trump is saying things very differently from what he said on the campaign trail.
Every year, almost 120,000 young people in Israel become eligible to serve in the Israeli army. But some of them face a much harder journey transitioning into the military because of their personal backgrounds. Today, there are several hundred Arab Israelis serving in the IDF, and that number is continuing to increase every year despite backlash from the Arab world. Youssef Saluta is a 20-year-old Arab from the north of Israel, and he chose to volunteer for the IDF's Desert Reconnaissance Battalion.
לما התגייסתי? כי אני מהמדינה הזאת, ואני אוהב את המדינה, ואני רוצה לתרום למדינה, ואני רוצה להיות חלק מהמדינה. וכולם צריכים להתגייס, כל אחד שחי פה צריך להתגייס.
Today, there are 175,000 people serving in the Israeli Defense Forces. The Israeli military drafts both young Jewish men and women when they turn 18 years old, but young Israeli Arabs are not required to serve. If they want to join the IDF, they're allowed to volunteer. And they even have the option to join the national service and receive benefits similar to those received by discharged soldiers. Most Arab volunteers in the national service are given work within the Arab community to help with social and community matters. But no matter what kind of work they're doing, their service is still viewed as a form of betrayal by many Israeli Arabs.
هي ظاهرة يعني احنا نعارضها بكل شك من كل الأسباب نعارضها. لا يمكن لإنسان أن يتجند في جيش ضد شعبه. يعني ماذا يمكن أن يتصور الإنسان وهو يخدم ضد أبناء شعبه.
Most of the Israeli Arabs who serve in the IDF come from the Bedouin community that is native to southern Israel. But they aren't the only ones. There are other Arab Israeli soldiers who are descendants of Palestinians who remained in Israel after the 1948 war of the state's founding, when hundreds of thousands of their people were forced to flee their homes. Now, as Israel attempts to expand its settlements in the West Bank, more and more Palestinians fear they may never end up with their own state. And as a result, nowadays Arabs serving for the IDF are viewed with more and more disdain.
نحن نحاول تثقيف الناس أن هذه ليست الطريقة، أن هذا مرفوض وطنيا وأخلاقيا. والغالبية العظمى من الشباب تتفهم ذلك وترفض ذلك.
But for many of the young Arab volunteers who decide to join the IDF, public opinion is of little importance.
הם לא מעניינים אותי. זאת המדינה שלי ואני צריך לתרום למדינה, אני צריך להיות חלק מהמדינה, להיות כמו כולם.
For other young Arab Israelis, serving in the IDF opens doors to improving their future.
התגייסתי כדי לתרום למדינה, וגם אני גר במדינה הזאת, והמדינה עוזרת לנו, והעתיד שלי יהיה טוב.
The head of the IDF Minorities Unit, Colonel Wajdi Salhan, says serving in the Israeli military simply makes life easier in the Jewish state.
לא מעט נערים חושבים שדרך השירות הצבאי הם פותחים לעצמם דלתות לחיים האזרחיים. היום זה הפך להיות מורכב הכל, גם ממקום לגור וגם מעבודה וגם אפילו לצאת בשדה תעופה שאתה מציג תעודת חוגר או תעודת חייל מילואים, אז זה הרבה יותר קל היום. אז הם מבינים שלהיות ישראלי בהיבט הזה או להיות חייל בצה"ל, אז זה תעודת זהות הישראליות בעצם, שיכולה לעזור להשתלבות בכמה מקומות.
But the big question is, aren't there major conflicts when Arab Israeli soldiers find themselves operating in the Palestinian territories?
אני חושב שבסך הכל, שוב, כל מי שהחליט להתגייס לקח את זה בחשבון ואנשים חיים עם זה.
Today marks the 36th anniversary of the death of legendary Beatles band member John Lennon. The Beatles may have never had the opportunity to play in Israel, but until today, they remain one of the most beloved bands in the Jewish state. Israel even boasts a John Lennon peace forest, which was planted by both Jewish and Arab children on a plot of land outside of Tzfat. Now, believe it or not, the Beatles weren't always loved by Israel. In fact, in the 1960s, the band was viewed as a corrupting influence. That is, until the beloved Israeli singer Naomi Shemer decided to readapt their music. Today, joining us in the studio is Dandan Galor, who is part of a musical duo who've made it their mission to celebrate the Beatles' influence on Israel. Thanks so much for coming in.
Hi.
So tell us first the name of your duo and a little bit more about your show. What kind of show is it? What makes it so special?
Okay, so we are Dandan and Jan. These are our names and the name of the band as well. And the show is about the Beatles, and it's also about Naomi Shemer that you've mentioned. It's the combination of both. Naomi Shemer, who's an Israeli poet, very, very important influence on Israeli poets, singer, songwriter Naomi Shemer. She wrote Jerusalem of Gold, very many important songs in Israeli culture, and the Beatles, which we all know. So these two really so important and loved icons are combined in our show together.
Wow. Now, what inspired you to create this type of show?
Well, I guess just our love for both these artists. We grew up as Israelis on the songs, with the songs of Naomi Shemer. And, a little bit later, at the age of maybe 15 or 16, we discovered the Beatles. And that was another, wow, whew, English, beautiful songs, beautiful melodies. And Naomi Shemer, as you said, she kind of embraced their music with the famous song Let It Be, which on the same melody of Let It Be, she wrote the song Lu Yehi, which later on she changed the melody for, but that was exactly the base for what she wrote. So she was also influenced by them. Everybody were, even though they weren't allowed to come to Israel.
Okay, so let's check out some of this music, obviously. We want to get a taste.
Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun, and I say it's alright. It's alright.
So it's beautiful, and everybody loves the Beatles. There's, I think anybody who hears these songs knows how to sing along with them, especially here in Israel. They're so loved. What kind of reaction have you gotten from people here in Israel, hearing you combine, both the Beatles and Naomi Shemer, who, in case our audience doesn't know, actually wrote and performed the famous song Jerusalem of Gold?
Well, we get really amazing reactions. Many people are, when they hear Naomi Shemer and the Beatles, it's like, okay. Or, okay, what's the connection between this and that? And then we have to tell them, you have to come and see the show to realize. And in the end of the show, many people approach us and say that, wow, they actually saw the connection. Because apart from what I've said before on Lu Yehi and Let It Be, it's like, it combines in our own, in our own lives, in our own culture, in our own association with Here Comes the Sun that we've just seen, and Or Ole Baboker, the light rising up in the morning, on one of her famous songs. So it's all, also the intros for the songs are really telling the story of what she did here, and at the same time the Beatles were there, and what happened until the end.
So it's really representing a time frame in world history, obviously, kind of the reflection of what's happening in Israel versus what was happening in the UK.
Exactly.
So, today, as I said, 36 years ago, we lost John Lennon in a very tragic way. And for people who loved the Beatles and loved his music, it was terrible. It was a huge tragedy. Now, how does it feel for you guys who perform Beatles on a daily basis to be remembering this day today?
Well, John Lennon is a great influence. Of course, the Beatles all are. John Lennon has this special thing of really going with his own thing, with his own truth the whole way. If he's now for peace, then he's going on, peace march, and he's going on demonstrations. If he's now into meditation, so he goes to India and does his meditation. If he's into the music, he's in the music. So he's really an inspiration for us. And we have a concert today that we're going to do special John Lennon, of course, with a few of his songs. And it's just his personality. His
And I
music.
understand that you like to do his voice, right, during your
John
concerts?
Lennon, he speaks like that, you know. He's got this British accent. He's saying, you know, meditation has made me a better person. And I wasn't such a bad person before.
Yeah, you
So-
see, you're the best. I think that's the best accent I've heard from an Israeli by far. So good job to you, kol hakavod. Now, you know, the show you're playing tonight. Where can we see you in the future if we're not able to make it to that concert?
Well,
tonight?
we have a Facebook page, of course, Dan Dan en Yan, which we mention our shows, and we upload all kind of things that we record, that we think, and the shows and CDs that we put out. Everything is there, and we're more or less performing all around Israel.
Beautiful. So my final question for you is, why do you think Israeli music lovers connect so strongly to the Beatles? I mean, what is it about? I know the world loves the Beatles, but here in Israel, you know, the Beatles remains one of the top, most loved bands here until today.
You know, it's a great question. Why does the Beatles, or why have they become such a legend? Because, you know, they're a great band, but there are many other great bands as well. I don't know if to say specifically about Israel. I know that Israelis have a good taste for music, definitely. We appreciate good music, we appreciate good melodies, good harmonies. And also something in the combination of the Beatles is like in the song of Naomi Shemer, Ala Dvash Vala Oketz, yeah? Is the sting and the honey. It's like they have everything. John Lennon is the sting, you know, he's more the going inside and telling the cold truth in people's faces. And there's Paul McCartney with the beautiful love songs of the honey. It's something in the special combination between the four of them that made them so special. That's what we think.
Absolutely. Well, it was wonderful to have you. And, you know, for our viewers who are interested in checking out more of this beautiful duo online, go to the website that he told us. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you very much for having us.
Israeli men enjoy one of the highest life expectancies in the world, and I'll bet you'll never guess why. The average man on the planet has a projected lifespan of 68.8 years, while his Israeli counterpart impressively lives on for another 12 years. A new study says this is because of the military service men are required to serve in defense of the Jewish state. It kind of seems like it should be the other way around given the numbers of wars and conflicts faced by Israeli soldiers. But after taking all kinds of other variables into consideration, such as standard of living and healthcare, researchers say the data strongly indicates that the IDF contributes to Israeli men's physical fitness. That, in turn, significantly improves their overall health, well-being, and life expectancy. Additional weight is added to this theory by another study of 130 OECD countries, finding that men from states where there's a compulsory draft live about 3 more years than those who don't. And even if those OECD army guys do get some extra time, they still only live for 77.7 years, while the average Israeli man reaches 81. It's interesting to note there's also a direct correlation between life expectancy and a nation's level of defense expenditure, which is quite high in Israel. Arab Israelis who share the same environment and social benefits but mostly don't serve in the army don't live as long. And by the way, the majority of Israeli Jewish women are also military vets, and they can expect to reach the ripe old age of 84.3, which is the 9th highest in the world. Israel's making great progress toward healing the pain suffered by millions of people around the world, and the key ingredient might just surprise you. It's medical marijuana, which has been found to be not only effective in treating various kinds of discomfort, but also for the relief of other troubling symptoms like extreme nausea. The Israeli pharmaceutical giant Teva Industries just announced the creation of a special device that can deliver metered amounts of the substance. Until now, patients were only able to smoke the cannabis, eat it, or use other types of less reliable inhalers. None of these methods work very well because there's no way to control the precise dosage. The Israeli inhaler, however, comes with pre-measured disposable cartridges and advanced technology that also controls temperature, airflow, and is equipped with a mechanism to enhance absorption. Another incredible new Israeli design are nanotech droplets made by the Israeli LDS startup company for over-the-counter sale in the US. The cannabis-derived compound can relieve both pain and inflammation through absorption into patients' bloodstreams. Medical personnel say the product has already been found to offer greater results than any other available solutions on the market today. Joint ventures between the Israeli company and an American firm have already resulted in a full range of other cannabis-based solutions to help people. And if anyone out there is hoping to use any of these amazing products for recreational purposes, sorry to disappoint you, but they're able to cure the problem with no narcotic effects whatsoever.
Masa Israel is home to the widest variety of immersive international experiences for Jewish young adults 18 to 30. Find the right study abroad internship, service learning, or Jewish studies program to help you grow as a person, a professional, and a leader, while also developing a robust global professional network that includes Israelis and Jews from around the world.
And now for the Hebrew word of the day. Israelis rank 8th in overall life expectancy, and with all of the recent medical innovations, that number will only go up. So today's word is aroch, or long. Just like in English, aroch refers to physical dimensions and lengths of time. So you could be talking about how aroch Israel's national hiking trail is. It's 1,009 kilometers, by the way. Or you could be watching your favorite movie and say, "Ze lo maspik aroch," or "Ugh, it's not long enough," because you love it so much. Now, as I said earlier, Israelis tend to live for a long time, but just remember that you can't judge a life by its length. So don't let those precious years go to waste. Find what you love to do and do it often. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast.
ILTV's weather forecast is sponsored by Adopt a Savta, taking care of Israel's lonely Holocaust survivors.
Tonight should be clear to partly cloudy and cold with a low of 50 or 10 degrees Celsius. You can expect the weekend to be more of the same, but temperatures should drop slightly through Saturday night with a high of 64 or 18 degrees Celsius. All right, everybody, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.79 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. Thanks for watching, and see you tonight.